Hey guys, tonight we sail through the choking fog of the North Sea, with the salt sting in your eyes and your fingers clenched around a splintered oar. The air is cold enough to chew through your bones, and the creak of the longship beneath you sounds suspiciously like groaning ghosts. Behind you, the hearth fires of home flicker and fade. Ahead, only the dark silhouette of foreign coastlines and a promise of glory or gutting. You feel it, don't you? The way your breath tightens in your throat, how your stomach curls in on itself, like it already knows something's about to go terribly wrong. You're not a hero. You're not even a villain yet. You're just a Viking about 5 seconds before the rating starts. And you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love seeing bedtime around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight slightly on the deck. The planks are wet, not with sea spray this time, but with the blood of a raider who tried to steal food from another's ration bag. It didn't end well. Nothing ends well out here. The North Sea doesn't just chew up ships, it swallows people whole. But you're not thinking about that right now. You're thinking about the coast ahead and the little village nestled beside a monastery where the bell tower looks like a tooth waiting to be pulled. It's not always this quiet. The others behind you, bearded, bristling, and belching, are usually louder. But tonight, even they're quiet. There's something about the first raid of the season that makes you remember the last one too vividly. That priest who wouldn't stop praying, even as your blade met his collarbone. The gold you couldn't carry. The kid that ran, fast, too fast for you to catch, but not too fast for the arrow behind you. This isn't glory. This is a job. Historians still argue whether Vikings raided primarily for economic necessity, or whether it was the thrill of conquest that drove them across oceans. But right now, with your stomach growling and your breath fogging up your vision, it sure doesn't feel like philosophy. It feels like hunger, and fear, and frostbite creeping into your toes. Above you, a raven circles. You like to think it's a sign from Odin, but deep down, you suspect it's just waiting for someone to die. There's a weird moment on every Viking raid where you realize your life is tethered to a piece of carved wood floating on a spiteful ocean. The longship, narrow, fast, and built without a single nail, bends with the waves, flexes with the current. It's alive in a way, like it's watching you, judging. Maybe that's why the prow is shaped like a dragon's head. So the sea monsters know you're not here to play. You're not alone. 25, maybe 30 others row alongside you, each one soaked in sweat and bad decisions. One guy is still drunk. He won't be when the blades come out. That sobers you up fast. Another guy is whispering something to his axe. Not praying, just whispering. It's the same axe that killed his brother last summer in a dispute over a goat. You remember that goat. It screamed a lot. Still, there's something thrilling about this waiting. The coastline is visible now. You can almost hear the cows lowing in the pastures. Soon, someone will scream, probably not from your crew, and that'll be the signal. No horns, no speeches, just the sound of a life breaking. You blink slowly. This is the moment they don't show in movies. The long exhale before a raid. The queasy silence, where you realize you're not a hero of legend. You're a guy with splinters in your butt and seawater in your boots, praying the first person to die isn't you. But you came here willingly. You left your farm, your mother's stew, and your semi-frozen goats to stand here. Why? Well, because back home, there's barely enough arable land for your family, let alone the 6 others crowding your village. The chieftain's son gets the best plots. You get the rocks. And raiding? That's opportunity. Gold, livestock, slaves, stories if you survive. And if you don't, well, they'll carve your name into a rock. Maybe, if someone remembers. Fringe theory time. Some archaeologists believe the first wave of Viking raids coincided with a sudden increase in solar storms, causing crop failures across Scandinavia. Could it be that solar activity played a role in kickstarting a century of plunder? Historians still argue over whether climate, politics, or ambition truly lit the Viking fuse. Either way, here you are. The shore grows larger. You can make out a chapel now. Its door swings in the breeze like it's waving. Some monks are out early, collecting herbs near the edge of the forest. One of them stops and squints toward the sea. You hold your breath. Does he see you? You're dressed in sealskin and wool, not armor. Helmets are expensive and heavy. Only a few of your crew wear them. Yours is leather, patched with iron studs and sweat. Your beard itches. Your stomach flips. The monk turns back toward the building. Didn't see you, or didn't believe what he saw. Your ship glides forward, silent, like death wearing oars for shoes. In this moment, everything sharpens. The salt on your lips, the scream of a gull overhead, the way your muscles tremble, not with fear, but with anticipation. The kind of adrenaline that makes your pupils dilate and your thoughts narrow to a pinpoint. One of the warriors ahead of you, Bjorn, whose nickname means probably cursed, grins with too many teeth and taps the side of his blade. You nod. You don't speak. You just row. And suddenly, you're in it. The longship scrapes the shore. Wet sand grips your boots as you leap out. The monk near the edge turns. His eyes go wide. He screams. There it is. You're not a raider until someone screams. The others fan out. Bjorn hits the chapel door with his shoulder, splinters flying. A bell starts to ring. Too late. You reach the steps of the monastery just as a figure in a brown robe raises a wooden cross like it's a sword. It's not, but the moment lingers in your mind. A small, soft person standing against a storm. You almost admire it. Then someone behind you tackles him. Gold glitters. So does blood. You came for riches, but the truth is, most monasteries don't have that much treasure lying around. A few silver chalices. Maybe a gospel book with a jewel or two. A stash of wine. It's not the treasure. It's the shock. The statement. Raiding a monastery isn't just about loot. It's about saying, your God can't protect you. That's the brutal reality. And now it's yours. Your breath comes in short. Shallow pulls as smoke curls into your nostrils. Sharp and woody. The unmistakable stench of scorched timbers and panic. You step over a broken doorway. The chapel, now more splinters than sanctum. Your boots leave wet prints on the stone floor. Each one tracking not just seawater, but streaks of something darker, thicker. You try not to look down. Someone behind you is laughing. Not the kind of laugh that comes from joy, but the kind that slips out when adrenaline pushes sanity to the back of the room and locks the door. It's a sound that might keep you up later, assuming you make it to later. This is your first raid. The others say you never forget your first. They're right. Outside, the village has erupted. Livestock scatter into the woods. Children vanish like mist, and the few men who try to fight, they don't last long. It's not that they're weak. It's just that you and your crew are prepared, brutal, and frankly a little too good at this. Historians still argue whether Viking warriors trained formally or simply learned through life and repetition. But looking around at your crewmates, who move like a single, violent tide, it's obvious that whatever the training looked like, it worked. No one hesitates. No one asks questions. They just move. And you move with them. But let's rewind a bit. You didn't just wake up one morning and decide to be a raider. No one does. Back in your fjord-strangled homeland, before you ever gripped a sword, you gripped something else. A heavy wooden yoke, cutting into your shoulders as you carried buckets of icy water up a rocky slope. Daily, for years. You're not just a fighter. You're a survivor of the forge. Viking life molds you like iron. Heated, hammered, cooled, and reheated again. From the time you could walk, you were pushed. Not gently. Pushed into rivers to learn how to swim. Pushed onto frozen fields to learn how to fall without breaking your neck. Pushed into fights with older cousins to build your spirit. As a child, you learned how to sail, how to trap eels with your bare hands, and how to identify the difference between edible moss and oops, You're hallucinating now, Moss. You learned to kill your first pig by the age of 10. You cried the first time. You didn't cry the second. It's not just survival skills. It's a culture of brutal pride. You grow up hearing the sagas, epic tales whispered around smoky hearth fires, filled with heroes who slay dragons, kill rival chieftains, and die with a smirk. You memorize every name, every betrayal, every last word uttered before a glorious death. There's no bedtime lullabies in your childhood, only battle chants. Even now, the voices of those sagas echo in your skull. You remember how they said Egil Skallagrimsson was such a berserker that he bit through his own shield in battle. Historians still debate if this actually happened, or if the chroniclers were just leaning into Viking drama. Either way, the image sticks. It motivates you when your legs start to shake. And the cold? You don't fear it. You trained in it. You wrestle barefoot in the snow for fun. Your skin thickened like boiled leather. You got a patch of frostbite on your left heel that you use as an icebreaker at parties. Pun absolutely intended. Your weapons aren't handed down like delicate heirlooms. They're forged, tested, and personalized. You carved a serpent into the hilt of your axe. You named your shield. Her name is Sigrun. And no, you're not embarrassed about it. Your armor? Sparse. You're not a knight. Mail is expensive, and most of your protection is your own agility and the hope that the guy opposite you has worse aim. You didn't just train your body. You trained your pride. You were told that a man who dies in bed is no man at all. That the Valkyries don't come for the cautious. That a name shouted in battle echoes longer than one whispered in peace. There's even a fringe belief, one your grandmother swore by, that if you die with your eyes closed, the gods won't see your soul. That's why you sleep with one eye open. And don't forget your first weapon. Not the one in your hand now, but the first one you were ever given. A carved wooden stick with iron nails hammered into the tip. You were 12. Your uncle handed it to you during a training raid. Yes, that's a thing. And said, if you die today, I'll keep your boots. You didn't die, but he did take your boots anyway. Just for fun. You can't help but grin remembering that. Right now, as you stand in this burning village with its thatched roofs curling like dry leaves, your boots feel like they weigh 10 pounds each. Not because they're heavy, because they carry all of that training, all that pressure, every quiet demand from your family to bring something back or don't come back at all. Training wasn't just drills and hardship. It was stories, warnings, lore woven into daily life. Remember that time you and your cousins spent 2 nights in the woods, hunting ghosts? It wasn't really about spirits. It was about learning to move silently, sleep without fire, and keep your bladder in check when something growled in the dark. And let's not forget the village games like Shield Wall Chicken, where 2 kids would run at each other with wooden shields until one fell into a pile of fish guts. Or who can scream longest while being slapped with an eel? Hint, you lost. Badly. These weren't just games. They were weird, gross, and strangely effective lessons in endurance. Fringe fact time. Some Viking warriors filed their teeth to make them look sharper. Not for chewing better, but to terrify. Imagine smiling at someone mid-battle with pointy, snarling molars. Yeah, that's one way to win a fight without swinging a blade. As the village continues to collapse around you, you realize something important. This isn't just a raid. It's a test, a ritual. You're proving that everything you've ever been taught wasn't a waste. You duck into a storehouse, kicking aside a broken pot. Inside, a frightened man raises a hoe at you. Not a sword, a hoe. He shouts something in a language you half understand. You lower your weapon, just slightly. He drops his first. There's a second of eye contact. Human. Raw. He's just trying to protect his family. You knock him out cold with the flat of your axe. You don't kill him. Not this time. But you don't know why. Outside, the others call your name. They found something. You step into the light. Smoke trails toward the sky like a prayer. Or a warning. The raid is almost done, and you're still standing. You pass the test. But the forge never stops. Every battle is another hammer blow. Every scar is a signature. Every breath you take out here is a reminder that you were built for this, shaped, beaten, and tempered. You're not just a raider. You're the blade they never meant to lose. The sea air is cold, but it carries a different scent now. One sharp with salt and something fiercer like iron and smoke. Your hands grip the side of the longship as it glides back out to the open water, the waves whispering against the hull like a warning. That narrow vessel beneath you isn't just a boat. No, it's more. It's your lifeline, your weapon, your shield, and sometimes your coffin. The longship is a masterpiece of ruthless design. You know this because you helped build one last winter, standing shivering in the shipyard as its shavings flew like snowflakes. Every plank was bent and nailed together without a single nail, because metal was precious and rust hated saltwater. The ship's frame is held tight with iron rivets and animal sinew. Living wood, some call it, because it flexes with the waves instead of breaking under pressure. Historians still argue whether the Vikings invented the clinker-build technique or simply perfected it. But anyone who's seen one of these ships slicing through a fjord knows it's engineering poetry with a hint of menace. The prow, carved to look like a dragon or serpent, glares over the bow as if daring the ocean itself to try and stop you. Some say the figureheads ward off sea monsters or angry spirits, but you suspect it's mostly to intimidate your enemies, and probably your crewmates too. There's something comforting about having a dragon watching your back when you're hours from shore. These ships are fast, faster than any other boat you've seen. A full crew of rowers can push it to speeds that would shame the best horses on land. But speed isn't the only trick. The longship's shallow draft means you can slip up rivers, sneak into villages from behind, and vanish before anyone can shout a warning. That's the real power. You remember the first time you sailed one, how your arms screamed with every stroke of the oar, the rhythmic slap, 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 filling your ears like a heartbeat. It was brutal, exhausting, but intoxicating. The oarsman's chorus was a language you learned, each pull bringing you closer to a world where the rules didn't apply. There's a rumor you heard in port once, that Viking longships could sail faster than the wind itself, thanks to the skill of their crews and the magic of the sea gods. Historians still argue whether that's legend or possible physics, but it's a nice story to whisper while your muscles burn. You're not just riding a ship, you're riding a living beast. The way it creaks and moans underfoot, bending and twisting with the waves, feels almost like it's breathing. You swear you can hear a faint hum, like the heartbeat of something ancient and unforgiving. The decks are slick with sea spray and the remains of the last raid. Mud, blood, and a few stray coins glinting in the moonlight. Your boots slip on the wet wood as you move toward the prow, where the dragon's head watches the horizon with fierce eyes. You think about what it must feel like for the people on the shore. The sudden dark shape cutting through the water, the sharp clang of metal against wood, and then the shouting, the screams, and the chaos. They call you a monster, a demon, a pirate. Some even say you're cursed. Maybe they're right. But you're also something else, a navigator of the unknown, a hunter in a world that rewards speed, cunning, and brutality. You don't just take what you want. You take what you need. And sometimes, what you need is more than anyone should have. You glance around the crew, faces painted with ash or war paint, eyes narrowed against the sea spray. Each person carries stories of battles survived, family lost, dreams sacrificed. You all share a code, unspoken but fierce, loyalty to the crew, and the promise that none will be left behind. Yet, even among your brothers and sisters, there's tension. The longship is a cramped place, and tempers flare like dry tinder. You remember the fight between Gunnar and Harold over a stolen piece of bread, ended with blood and broken bones. That night, the ship seemed to shudder with rage, as if it too was tired of human foolishness. The longship isn't just a vehicle. It's a microcosm of Viking society, where strength, cunning, and loyalty are tested every hour. If you fail to pull your weight, you don't just risk death from an enemy blade. You risk drowning in the cold sea, forgotten and alone. And speaking of drowning, there's an odd superstition among sailors. You never swear on a voyage. Breaking an oath on a ship is said to bring storms and shipwreck. You've heard stories of crews lost to the sea because someone couldn't keep their tongue in check. There's also the matter of navigation, which you've learned is both art and science. You don't have fancy compasses or GPS, but you do have the sun, the stars, the flight patterns of birds, and a deep knowledge passed down through generations. You've heard tales of Vikings using sunstones to find the sun even through thick clouds. Historians still argue whether these were real crystals or myth. At night, you look up at the sky and find the North Star, Polaris, the steady beacon that guides you home or leads you to new lands. The cold bites your cheeks, but the stars hold stories older than your village. The longships hold carries not just weapons and treasure, but also provisions, dried fish, salted meat, and barrels of ale that help dull the ache in your bones. There's always a balance between packing enough to survive and packing too much to sail fast. Decisions like this can mean the difference between life and death. As the coastline fades behind you, swallowed by fog and darkness, the longship becomes your entire world. The endless sea, stretching in every direction, is both a highway and a wilderness, a place where you are both hunter and prey. You lean against the dragon's head and let the cold wind whip your face, tasting the salt and the promise of more raids, more battles, more stories to be carved into stone. Because that's what the longship means. Not just survival, but freedom, power, a brutal kind of poetry on the waves. And tonight, you ride that poetry straight into the storm. The moment your feet hit the cold, wet earth, the sound of your breathing is almost louder than the world around you. You've left the longship behind, but the ocean's scent still clings to your skin, a salty reminder of the journey and the chaos that brought you here. This place is different. It smells of damp earth, rotting leaves, and something older, something that feels like forgotten stories buried under centuries of moss and silence. You trudge through thick underbrush, every step slow and deliberate, because the ground is uneven and the shadows play tricks on your eyes. The sun is just starting to rise, the pale light filtering through the trees like a hesitant promise. You know you can't rest yet, not until the raid is complete and the loot secured. The village you've come to isn't the easy target from the last raid. This one's nestled deep in the forest, hidden away from the sea breeze and prying eyes. It's a place where every twig snapping underfoot might spell disaster, where the lines between hunter and hunted blur like smoke in the morning sun. You keep your hand on your axe, the one with the serpent carved into its hilt, because here every second counts. The trees seem to lean in, whispering warnings you're not sure you want to hear. You remember a tale your grandfather told you once, about a forest spirit that lured travelers to their doom with ghostly lights and eerie laughter. Historians still debate whether such spirits were real or were just stories meant to keep children from wandering too far. As you move deeper, the sounds of the village come into focus. Low murmurs, the clinking of metal, the occasional bark of a dog. But there's something off. The village feels tense, like it's holding its breath, waiting for something terrible. You pause behind a fallen log, eyes scanning the edge of a clearing where the huts cluster. The villagers are awake, but wary, their faces drawn tight with fear and resolve. You notice they've sharpened stakes and gathered hunting bows. This won't be a quick in and out. Your crew spreads out silently, shadows among shadows, slipping through the trees like ghosts. You admire their skill, but you can't help feeling the weight of what's coming. The smell of smoke isn't just from burning fires. It's from old wounds, grudges, and a raw hunger for survival. You remember reading that Vikings often struck during dawn or dusk, exploiting the dim light to their advantage. It makes sense you're doing the same now. The twilight hours are your cloak, your ally. The world seems to slow down, giving you a split second to strike before panic takes hold. There's a moment, just before the attack, where everything freezes, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves. Even your own heartbeat seems to stall. It's the calm before the storm, a breath held too long. And then it breaks. The village erupts into chaos. Arrows fly from the trees, meeting your shields with sharp clangs. Villagers scream warnings, some grabbing makeshift weapons, others fleeing with whatever they can carry. The dogs bark and growl, lunging at your ankles. You charge forward, adrenaline drowning out the cold and the ache in your muscles. Your axe swings in wide arcs, cutting through wooden doors and enemy defenses alike. There's no time to hesitate, only the primal need to survive and conquer. You spot a young woman wielding a spear, her eyes fierce despite the fear. She lunges at you, but you sidestep just in time, feeling the spear's point brush past your shoulder. You catch her arm, twisting it gently but firmly until she drops the weapon. Her gaze doesn't falter. You sense she's not just a helpless villager, but someone who has fought before. You lower your axe, surprising both her and yourself. Maybe it's exhaustion, or maybe it's the echo of a memory, a story your mother told you about mercy being the rarest kind of strength. Whatever it is, you let her go. Around you, the battle rages, a symphony of violence and desperation. Your crew moves like a well-oiled machine, each person knowing their role without words. The stakes are high, but so is the reward. Among the chaos, you notice a pile of strange objects, a collection of carved bones, twisted metal, and faded cloth. It looks like a shrine, or maybe a warning left by the villagers. You reach out to touch one of the bones, feeling a chill run through your fingers. Your grandfather would have called it a talisman against evil spirits. There's a quirk you've heard about Viking raids. Some warriors believed in collecting war trophies not just from enemies, but from places, objects, even weather. A branch struck by lightning, a stone with a strange shape. These are tokens of power, proof that the gods were on your side. Historians still debate how much of this belief shaped Viking tactics versus being clever storytelling to keep morale high. You think maybe it's a bit of both. The fight winds down, villagers scattering into the woods or surrendering. Your crew rounds up the loot, grain sacks, crafted tools, and a few prized animals. It's not just about gold or silver. It's about resources to survive another harsh winter back home. You pause for a moment, breathing hard, the taste of dirt and sweat thick in your mouth. The sun is fully up now, burning through the trees, casting long shadows behind the fallen. The village lies in disarray, but the living remain, scarred but defiant. You realize that every raid is more than just a battle. It's a collision of worlds, each side fighting for their version of survival, their stories, their futures. And you're caught in the middle, a blade between two hearts. You wonder how many of these villages you'll see before the sea calls you home again. And if you'll ever look at the forest the same way. Because out here, in the quiet between raids, the brutal reality settles in. Victory is never just about strength. Sometimes, it's about what you're willing to leave behind. The forest begins to fade behind you as you trek back toward the shoreline. The wet earth giving way to sand and salt-stiffened grass. Your boots leave imprints on the beach, brief traces of your passage that the tide will soon swallow. The longship waits just beyond the breakers, rocking gently like a beast lured by the call of home. But you're not yet ready to rest. The work of a raid is far from over. You and your crew have secured the loot, but the real challenge now is escape. And that's where the longship's design truly earns its fearsome reputation. You've seen rival ships slower, clumsier, struggling to navigate the winding river mouths or the shallow reefs. Your ship, by contrast, can skim the waves and slip through hidden waterways like a shadow, its shallow draft making it a ghost on the water. As you climb aboard, you take a moment to appreciate how quiet the world feels in the early morning. The fog still heavy and the water smooth as glass. There's a strange calm, almost surreal, that follows the chaos of battle. The adrenaline still buzzes in your veins, but the cool sea breeze helps wash it away, grounding you. Historians still argue whether the longships could have been sailed by a single skilled helmsman or if every crew members had to work in perfect harmony. But you know from experience that it's the team effort that keeps you alive. The rhythm of the rowing is like a living pulse. When it falters, the ship falters, and so does your life. The mast rises like a spear in the center of the ship. The sail, once tightly furled, is unfurled now, snapping in the wind like a warning flag. Its bold stripes are as much a statement of identity as they are practical gear, announcing to friend or foe exactly who is coming. Sometimes, you swear you can hear the whispers of past crews woven into the sail's fibers, their stories riding the wind alongside you. You settle into your position among the oarsmen, the wooden bench cool against your legs. Your muscles remember the rhythm, the stretch, the pull, the glide back to start again. Each stroke carves a steady beat through the mist. The sun climbs higher, burning away the fog and revealing the endless expanse of sea. You catch sight of seabirds wheeling overhead, gulls and cormorants circling like silent sentinels. Some say these birds are guides, leading sailors to safety or warning of storm. There's even a quirky Viking superstition that if a raven lands on your ship, it's a good omen. If it flies away, not so much. Historians still debate how much of these tales were simple seafaring traditions versus spiritual beliefs. Your thoughts drift to the dangers that still lurk beneath the waves. Hidden rocks, sudden storms, and worse. You've heard stories of entire fleets lost to treacherous waters, swallowed by the sea without a trace. The ocean is as beautiful as it is brutal, a fickle mistress who grants no favors. Suddenly, a sharp cry breaks the calm. One of the scouts spots a fleet of ships on the horizon. Foreign vessels, large and well-armed, their sails dark like storm clouds. A chill runs down your spine. You know this is no coincidence. The raid has drawn attention, and now you're the hunted. Your captain shouts orders, the crew scrambling to prepare for the chase. The oars plunge harder into the water, the longship surging forward like a living thing, every man and woman pushing beyond exhaustion. The wind catches the sail, billowing it out as if to shield you, but the enemy ships are closing fast. The tension is electric. You glance around, catching the faces of your comrades, some grim, some fierce, all determined. This is the brutal reality of Viking raids. The spoils are sweet, but the price of failure is death or worse. As you push the ship to its limits, you recall a fringe theory you once overheard, that Viking ships were sometimes equipped with small, hidden caches of herbs or oils to calm the crew's nerves during storms or battles. It sounds like superstition, but maybe it's another kind of weapon, the power of the mind over fear. Historians still argue about how much Viking warfare relied on psychological tactics versus brute force, but you know one thing for sure. Fear is a weapon no less deadly than any axe or sword. The enemy fleet closes in, their war cries carried faintly on the wind. The longship's dragon prow cuts through the waves, and your heart pounds like a war drum. You realize that survival here depends on more than speed and strength. It's about cunning, timing, and a little luck whispered from the gods. The chase has begun, and you're riding the edge of chaos, where every decision could be your last, and every wave could be a grave. The longship surges forward, every oar in sync, slicing through the frothing sea with a relentless drive. You can taste the salt on your lips and feel the sting of spray against your cheeks. The enemy ships behind you loom like dark shadows, their sails swollen with the wind, and their warriors shouting curses that cut through the roar of the waves. It's a chase for your life, and every muscle in your body screams to keep the rhythm. Faster, harder, longer. The sea is your battlefield, but also your unpredictable opponent. A sudden swell rocks the ship, sending a splash of icy water over the side. The longship groans and creaks as if warning you not to push it too far. You remember how these vessels were built to flex, not break, with their overlapping planks designed for strength and speed. Historians still debate how much these ships could withstand in open ocean storms, but right now, you're hoping it's enough to outrun death itself. The enemy closes the gap. You glimpse their warriors readying bows and spears, the glint of blades catching the morning sun. The air crackles with tension, the promise of battle imminent. Your heart thunders a warning rhythm that matches the pounding of the oars. Suddenly, your captain yells a command, a sudden turn toward a narrow channel between jagged rocks, a shortcut known only to your crew, learned through years of sailing these waters. It's risky, the water shallow and full of hidden reefs, but might just be your only chance. You grip your oar tighter, your knuckles whitening, and brace for the sudden jolt as the ship veers sharply. The channel narrows, the cliffs rising on either side like ancient sentinels, their jagged faces smeared with seaweed and salt. The water churns violently as the longship careens through the passage, scraping against stones and making your stomach lurch. You hold your breath, eyes wide, heart pounding. One wrong move, and it's over. Your crew grits their teeth and rows with all their might, voices low and steady, chanting to keep the rhythm. It's a moment where skill, trust, and luck collide. The ship shudders but holds firm, slipping past the rocks with barely a scratch. You exhale slowly, feeling the tension ebb like the tide. This daring maneuver buys you precious time. The enemy ships hesitate at the channel's mouth, too large to follow without risking destruction. You can almost hear the curses carried by the wind, frustration thick in the air. There's a quirk to this kind of naval warfare. The longship's shallow draft allows these narrow escapes, but it also demands a special kind of navigation skill, passed down like a secret treasure from one generation to the next. Some say the Vikings had hidden maps carved on wood or stone, but historians still argue whether those existed or if it was all memorized from stories and stars. You lean on the railing, catching your breath as the open sea stretches before you again. The sun is climbing higher, drying your clothes and warming your chilled skin. The wind picks up, filling the sail and urging you onward. You glance at the loot piled in the hold, sacks of grain, bundles of furs, and a small chest of coins. It's a hard-won prize, but the real reward is survival and the stories you'll carry back. Tales of daring escapes, fierce battles, and the sharp edge between life and death. Amid the adrenaline and the sweat, a strange calm settles over you, the kind that comes from knowing you've cheated fate once again. The sea still roars, but you're alive. You're free. And for now, that's enough. Your captain claps a heavy hand on your shoulder, his voice low but steady. We live to fight another day. You nod, the truth of that simple phrase sinking deep. In this moment, you understand the brutal beauty of the Viking raids. Not just the violence, but the cunning, the brotherhood, and the fragile dance with death that defines your world. And as the longship cuts through the waves toward home, you feel the fierce pulse of that life beating strong within you. The shoreline finally reappears, a ribbon of green and gold stretching beneath the rising sun. You feel the familiar mix of relief and weariness settle in your bones as the longship glides closer to home. The wind carries the scent of pine and hearth fires, a stark contrast to the salt and sweat of the raid. Your muscles are tight from the relentless rowing, but your spirit is buoyed by the promise of safety and celebration. As the ship scrapes against the muddy bank, your crew springs into action. They unload the loot with practiced efficiency, hauling sacks of grain, furs, and iron tools onto the shore. There's a quiet pride in the way each person moves, knowing the dangers you just faced and the spoils you bring back. This isn't just about wealth. It's about survival, reputation, and the stories that will be told around future fires. You take a moment to look around the settlement, the familiar cluster of wooden huts and smoke curling from chimneys. Your people have built a world here, rough, raw, but fiercely alive. It's a fragile world, one constantly threatened by hunger, harsh winters, and rival clans. The raid was a gamble, a brutal necessity to keep this place thriving. You catch sight of the village elder, a weathered woman with eyes sharp as flint. She watches your return with a mixture of relief and scrutiny, knowing that every raid shapes the fate of the community. She approaches, her voice steady but edged with concern. Did the gods favor us this time? You nod, recounting the narrow escape through the rocky channel, the fierce resistance, and the precious haul. The elder listens intently, her gaze piercing as if weighing the stories against the harsh realities you face. Historians still debate how much Viking leaders relied on divine favor versus tactical skill. But here, belief and pragmatism live side by side. The night falls, and the village gathers around roaring fires. The air fills with laughter, song, and the clink of ale cups. Stories of the raid unfold, some told with exaggeration, others with a quiet reverence for those lost or wounded. There's a rhythm to these tales, a shared heartbeat that binds the community. You sit among your comrades, the warmth of the fire chasing away the chill and the shadows of the forest. Your thoughts drift to the strange rituals you saw in the village you raided, the carved bones and twisted metals left as warnings or prayers. Some say these objects hold power, others that they are mere superstition. Historians still argue whether Viking raids were driven more by practical needs or spiritual beliefs. You notice a young child staring at you wide-eyed, probably hearing these stories for the first time. You smile softly, knowing that these tales will fuel dreams, fears, and perhaps the next generation of warriors. As the firelight flickers and the night deepens, you feel the weight of all you've experienced. The brutality of the raids, the thrill of survival, and a fragile hope that keeps your people moving forward. And you realize that this life, wild, dangerous, and uncertain, is yours to live. Every dawn brings new challenges, new battles, and new stories waiting to be told. The next morning dawns gray and cool, with mist hanging low over the village like a whispered secret. The chill in the air seeps into your bones, reminding you that the battles fought aren't just with other people. They're with the elements, with time, and with the relentless march of survival. You wake before the sun, the firelight from last night's celebration now reduced to faint embers, and step outside to greet a day heavy with promise and dread. Your hands still ache from wielding axe and oar, but there's little time to rest. The longships need maintenance. The salt water corrodes wood and iron faster than you'd like, and every plank, every nail, must be inspected carefully. You and the others begin scraping barnacles and repairing torn sails, each task a quiet ritual that keeps the ship seaworthy for the next journey. The work is rhythmic and absorbing, a physical meditation after the chaos of the raid. You pause for a moment, running your fingers over the rough wood of your favorite axe handle, the serpent carving worn smooth by years of use. It's more than a tool or weapon. It's a symbol of who you are and where you come from. There's a quirky detail you recall from a tale told around campfires. Some Viking warriors personalized their weapons with not just carvings, but small hidden compartments, sometimes holding herbs or charms to protect them in battle. Historians still debate how widespread these practices were, or if they're more myth than fact, but the idea adds a layer of mysticism to your gear. As the sun climbs higher, the village stirs to life. Children run laughing through the dirt streets. Elders share whispered wisdom on wooden benches, and merchants set up stalls with furs, tools, and salted fish. It's a bustling, noisy, vibrant world that feels both fragile and fierce. The contrast to the violent raids couldn't be sharper. You overhear a conversation about the recent raid. Questions about how the village fought back, what was taken, and what might come next. The stories grow with each telling, shadows stretching longer than the truth. There's a fierce pride in your people's resilience, but also a simmering fear. You know the raids will continue, the cycle of attack and defense spinning endlessly like the turning of the seasons. Your mind drifts to the fragile politics of Viking clans, the alliances and rivalries that often dictated when and where raids occurred. Sometimes, a raid was less about survival and more about sending a message, a brutal warning wrapped in fire and blood. Historians still argue about how much Viking raids were driven by economic necessity versus power plays and revenge. You decide to visit the blacksmith's forge, where the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil cuts through the morning air. The smith is a large man with soot-blackened arms and a grin that's as fierce as his work. He shows you a new batch of arrowheads, their shapes designed for maximum damage and precision. He jokes about how a well-placed arrow can decide a battle before swords even cross. Watching him work, you realize how vital these craftspeople are to your survival. Their skill transforms raw materials into instruments of war and life. The cycle of raid, repair, and preparation never truly ends. You take a deep breath, the air sharp with smoke and pine, and feel a strange calm settle over you. Life in this world is brutal, yes, but it's also full of moments like this. The crackle of fire, the steady beat of the forge, the shared laughter of your people. And as the day stretches out before you, you know the next raid will come. The sea will call again. The longships will glide through the mist, and you'll be ready. You step onto the hill overlooking your village as dusk creeps over the horizon. The sky painted in shades of orange and purple that fade into a deep indigo. The air carries a biting chill, sharper now with the coming night. From this vantage point, you see smoke curling gently from chimneys, the flicker of hearth fires lighting windows like scattered stars on the earth. There's a moment of peace here, a fragile bubble in a world that has never been kind. But peace is a luxury. The brutal reality of Viking raids never truly fades. As you watch, your mind drifts back to the last attack, the clash of axes and shields ringing in your ears like distant thunder. The memory isn't just of violence. It's the fear, the adrenaline, the raw will to survive. These feelings are as much a part of you as the land beneath your feet. You think about the defenses your village has built over the years. Palisades made from sharpened stakes, watchtowers manned by vigilant sentinels, and the trenches dug to slow down any attackers daring enough to approach. The fortifications are crude but effective, a testament to your people's resilience and ingenuity. Yet, historians still argue whether these defenses were enough or if many villages were simply doomed to fall eventually. There's a quirky bit of folklore you remember from your childhood. Tales of hidden tunnels beneath some Viking settlements. Secret escape routes carved into the earth for desperate times. Some swear these tunnels existed, but others dismiss them as myth. You wonder if your village might have one, a last refuge in the darkest moments. As darkness settles, you join the evening gathering in the main hall. The air is thick with smoke from the central fire, and the scent of roasting meat mingles with the tang of ale. The hall buzzes with stories, laughter, and a low hum of strategy talks. Leaders debate when and where the next raids might strike and how best to prepare. You catch snippets of talk about the broader political landscape, alliances shifting like sand, rival clans jockeying for power. You notice a visiting trader from a distant land, his colorful robes and strange accent marking him as an outsider. Traders like him bring news from beyond the seas, rumors of new kingdoms, strange customs, and even whispers of Christianity spreading in far-off places. Historians still argue how much Viking culture was influenced by these foreign encounters during the height of the raids. You lean back, sipping your ale slowly, letting the warmth spread through you. Despite the hardships and the constant threat, there's a fierce pride in this community, one forged in fire and blood, yes, but also in laughter, song, and shared dreams. Tonight, the world feels small and manageable, held together by stories and the steady beat of your heart. But you know tomorrow could bring anything, another raid, a harsh winter, or a new alliance. And in that uncertainty lies the raw, brutal truth of the Viking life. The chill of dawn seeps into your bones as you stand once more on the shore, watching the longships line up like dark arrows pointed at the horizon. The sails billow with the wind, creaking and groaning as if impatient for the coming journey. You can almost taste the sharp tang of salt and seaweed. Feel the rough wood beneath your hands. The raid is about to begin again, and you can't help but feel the familiar mix of excitement and dread swirling in your gut. There's a strange kind of poetry to these moments, the calm before the storm, when every sound feels amplified and every breath counts. Your captain moves among the crew, checking weapons and giving orders with the quiet authority of a man who's seen too many battles to be rattled by any one of them. His voice cuts through the morning mist like a knife, steady and sure. You grip your axe tighter, feeling its weight as a grounding force. There's an odd tradition among your people. Some warriors would paint their weapons with animal blood or ochre before battle, believing it would give them strength or protection. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or simply ritualistic exaggerations. As the ships push off from the shore, the rhythm of the oars becomes a steady heartbeat. The longship surges forward, swift and silent like a predator. You scan the horizon, searching for the target village, the next prize. The landscape blurs past, rocky cliffs, dense forests, and endless stretches of water. The approach is always tense. You know the element of surprise is crucial. If the enemy is prepared, the raid could turn into a deadly trap. But if you strike first, you could seize riches, captives, and honor. You remember a quirky story from a fellow warrior about a raid where the attackers accidentally landed in the wrong village, only to find themselves surrounded by allies of their intended target. The resulting skirmish was chaotic, embarrassing, and, thankfully, short-lived. It's moments like these that remind you how human even the fiercest raiders can be, prone to mistakes and misjudgments. Historians still argue whether the Vikings' reputation as ruthless marauders is entirely fair or if it's been exaggerated over centuries. Some suggest that many raids were more about trade, negotiation, and political influence than outright destruction. The longships slide quietly into a narrow bay, hidden from view by cliffs and trees. You can see smoke rising from chimneys, a sure sign of habitation. The target is vulnerable, but not undefended. You ready your weapons, your senses sharp. The captain signals, and the warriors prepare to disembark. Your heart pounds, the adrenaline sharpening every nerve. The brutal reality of the raid is about to unfold again. Chaos, fear, and a desperate fight for survival. And in this moment, you remind yourself, this is your world. Dangerous, wild, and unforgiving, but alive with the fierce pulse of adventure. You step off the longship, your boots sinking into the soft earth of the shore, where grass meets mud in a slippery, uncertain boundary. The air here is thick with the scent of smoke and wood smoke, the smell of hearth fires, and perhaps the burning of crops, the harbinger of a raid underway. Your pulse races, heart drumming a rapid tattoo against your ribs, every sense tuned to the wild rhythm of battle. The village sprawls before you, a cluster of thatched roofs and timber walls, smoke rising from chimneys like lazy ghosts against the morning sky. Women and children scramble in panic, the clang of metal and cries of alarm echoing through the narrow streets. You catch glimpses of defenders grabbing spears and shields, hastily mustering their courage. This isn't a simple robbery, it's a desperate fight to survive. You move swiftly, adrenaline sharpening your movements. The ground crunches underfoot as you charge forward, the clash of steel soon filling the air. The first blow lands, the clang of axes against shields ringing like thunder. You feel the sting of sweat and dirt mixing on your skin, the smell of blood faint but unmistakable. In the chaos, a curious sight catches your eye. A defender wielding a makeshift weapon, a wooden staff wrapped in leather and studded with nails. It's crude, yet effective, a testament to the ingenuity born of desperation. Some Vikings believed in using whatever was at hand, embracing practicality over tradition. Historians still debate how often such improvisation actually turned the tide in these brutal skirmishes. The battle ebbs and flows like the tide, with moments of fierce violence giving way to brief lulls. You notice how your fellow warriors communicate through subtle gestures and shouted commands, the unspoken bond forged by countless raids. The chaos isn't mindless. It's a grimly orchestrated dance, where survival depends on instinct and discipline. You pause for a breath, the weight of your axe heavy in your hands. Nearby, a young warrior tumbles, blood seeping from a wound, but still gripping his weapon with fierce determination. The scene is brutal but strangely human. Fear, courage, pain, and hope tangled together in a raw, visceral mix. There's a quirk in Viking warfare. Some warriors carried small tokens or charms, believed to bring luck or protection in battle. You feel the familiar smoothness of a carved bone tucked inside your tunic, a silent reminder that even in the bloodiest moments, belief and superstition hold sway. Historians still argue whether these items had any real significance or were just comforting symbols. As the fighting intensifies, you see the enemy's line begin to falter. Their shouts grow desperate, their formations crumble. You press forward, driven by a mix of fear and fierce determination. The raid is a brutal gamble, a violent interruption of life's fragile balance. And as the village falls silent, smoke rising in thick plumes, you know this moment will be carved into your memory, etched forever in the brutal reality of the Viking raids. The aftermath is a strange kind of silence, heavy, thick, almost deafening. The once vibrant village now lies broken and smoldering, the scent of smoke mingling with the earth's dampness and the faint metallic tang of blood. You trudge through the charred remains, the crunch of debris beneath your boots, a grim reminder of the cost of victory. The air feels dense, weighted with the lives that have been upended in a matter of hours. You catch sight of the villagers who survived, huddled in small groups. Their faces a mix of fear, grief, and defiance. Children clutch their mothers' skirts. Elders lean heavily on staffs, and warriors nurse wounds with grim stoicism. The raid has changed everything for them, and you can't help but wonder what the future holds. Among the ruins, you notice something unexpected, a small wooden carving, half buried in ash. It's a delicate figure of a raven, intricately detailed. You remember the stories told around campfires about Odin's ravens, Hugin and Munin, who flew across the world gathering knowledge for their master. These symbols held deep meaning, believed to guide and protect the Vikings. Historians still argue how widespread such symbolism was in everyday life versus ritual contexts. As you move through the wreckage, your thoughts turn to the spoils of the raid. Loot is more than treasure. It's the lifeblood of your community. Grain, livestock, weapons, and slaves will keep your people fed and secure through the harsh months ahead. But the acquisition of these goods comes with a moral complexity that even your fellow warriors sometimes debate quietly when the fires burn low. You hear whispers about the fate of captives, taken as slaves or hostages, sometimes ransomed back to their families, other times absorbed into your own community. The practice of slavery in Viking society was brutal but common, a stark reminder that the raids were as much about human lives as material wealth. Historians still debate the scale and impact of slavery on Viking culture. As dusk falls, you sit by a dying fire, the embers casting a soft glow on your tired face. The world feels both vast and claustrophobic. The endless sea that brought you here, now a barrier separating you from home. You think about the cyclical nature of these raids: strike, return, rebuild, and strike again. In this quiet moment, you realize the raid is not just a story of violence, but a reflection of human resilience, ambition, and survival. The brutal reality of Viking raids is harsh and unforgiving. Yet within it lies a complex tapestry of life, death, and the unyielding drive to endure. You awake the next morning to the sharp cry of seabirds circling overhead, their calls echoing off the cliffs like nature's own battle horns. The longships are already being readied for the journey home, sails unfurled and oars polished, waiting for the right moment to catch the favorable winds. You run your hands over the deck's worn planks, still sticky with salt and grime from the raid, feeling the weight of exhaustion settling into your muscles. The return trip is often as perilous as the raid itself. You know the waters are riddled with hidden dangers, treacherous currents, rocky shoals, and the ever-present risk of enemy ships lying in wait. But more than the physical challenges, the psychological toll of what you've done and witnessed weighs heavily. There's no glory in the silence that follows the battle, only the heavy quiet of survival. You recall an odd custom among some Viking crews. Before setting sail, they would carve runes into their ship's prows for protection. Some believed these symbols called on the gods to calm the seas or blind their enemies. Historians still debate how much these rituals affected morale, or whether they were mere superstition wrapped in cultural identity. The days at sea blend into one another. Endless waves, the rhythmic slap of oars, and the salty spray biting at your face. You and your comrades share stories to keep spirits high, weaving tales of past raids, mythical creatures, and the promise of feasts awaiting you at home. There's humor even in hardship. One crew member jokes that if the gods wanted you to have calm seas, they'd have given you a nicer job than being a Viking raider. As the coastline of your homeland emerges from the morning mist, a swell of relief and anticipation washes over you. The familiar shapes of cliffs and forests promise shelter and safety, but also the beginning of another chapter, unloading the loot, healing the wounds, and preparing for whatever comes next. You think about the complex legacy of these raids, the fear they inspired, the wealth they brought, and the cultural exchanges that followed. Some historians argue that Viking raids were not just destruction, but catalysts for change, spreading ideas, technology, and trade across Europe. As you step onto solid ground once more, the sun warming your skin, you realize that every raid, brutal as it is, also forges new bonds and stories. The sea has taken much, but it has given you this moment, the chance to survive, to rebuild, and to dream of the next journey. Back in your village, the mood shifts from battle-hardened tension to cautious celebration. The air is thick with a mingled sense of roasting meat and fresh pine, a comforting contrast to the acrid smoke of burning villages left behind. Children dart between adults, their laughter tentative but infectious, as the community gathers to share the spoils and stories from the raid. The longships rest at the docks, their sails lowered, the oars stowed, but their presence still commands respect. You join the crowd around the great hall, where the chieftain presides over the distribution of loot. Rich pelts, gleaming weapons, and sacks of grain are parceled out, each item carrying weight far beyond its material value. To you, the true treasure lies in the promise of survival through the coming winter and the honor earned among your kin. A quirky detail floats to your mind, a tale of a Viking raid where the warriors brought back not gold or slaves, but rare spices from distant lands. The story sounds almost too exotic for these rugged shores, but speaks to the vast reach of Viking trade networks and curiosity. Historians still argue how interconnected Viking society was with the broader medieval world, balancing raiding with commerce and diplomacy. The feast begins with a slow-burning fire, casting flickering shadows on the wooden walls. Mead flows freely, and the hall fills with song and laughter, punctuated by the occasional roar of a boastful warrior recounting feats of bravery or clever strategy. Despite the violence just endured, there's a profound sense of community, resilience, and defiance. You find yourself beside the skald, the storyteller whose words weave magic from memory and myth. He spins a tale of the sea god Njord, protector of sailors and fishermen, whose favor is coveted on every voyage. The story reminds you that beneath the brutality of raids lies a deep connection to nature, faith, and the unknown. Historians still debate the extent to which Viking religion shaped daily life versus serving as a backdrop to more pragmatic concerns. Later, as the night deepens, you step outside to breathe in the cool air. The stars shimmer overhead, constant and distant, witnesses to the cycles of raid and rest that define your existence. You realize that the brutal reality of Viking raids is more than battles and bloodshed. It's a complex web of survival, faith, culture, and unyielding human spirit. For tonight, at least, the world feels a little softer, wrapped in the glow of firelight and the bonds of kinship. The morning sun creeps over the horizon, casting a pale gold light that filters through the mist to dance on the damp grass. You wake with a dull ache lingering in your muscles, a souvenir from yesterday's raid. The day ahead promises more than just rest. It's time to heal, rebuild, and prepare for the uncertainty looming on the edges of your world. You make your way to the healer's hut, where herbs and potions line rough wooden shelves. The scent of dried lavender and pine mingles with something earthier, moss, bark, and a hint of smoke. The healer, a weathered woman with hands steady as stone, examines your wounds with practiced eyes, murmuring incantations in a language half forgotten. It's a blend of science and mysticism, a tradition passed down through generations. Historians still debate the origins of Viking medicine. How much was homegrown knowledge versus borrowed from the cultures they encountered? As she works, you watch the village begin its slow recovery. Families repair homes, farmers tend to fields scorched or trampled, and blacksmiths hammer new tools and weapons with rhythmic determination. The resilience here is palpable, a quiet strength beneath the scars. You recall a quirky Viking custom. During times of hardship, some communities would hold peace feasts to strengthen alliances and mend wounds, both physical and political. These gatherings were vital in a world where betrayal and violence lurked close by. Historians still argue how common or effective these peace feasts truly were in maintaining stability. The day stretches lazily as you help rebuild a fence, the sun warming your back and the familiar sounds of hammer onward creating a soothing rhythm. You talk with neighbors about the future, the risks of another raid, and the hope that your people might someday find peace beyond the endless cycle of violence. Later, you sit by the river's edge, the water cool and clear as it tumbles over smooth stones. You dip your hands in, the chill a refreshing contrast to the day's labor. The river is a lifeline, a source of sustenance and connection to the wider world. Viking settlements often sprang up near rivers for exactly these reasons: ease of travel, trade, and defense. As twilight falls, you ponder the complex legacy of these raids, the fear they sowed, the communities they shaped, and the cultures they intertwined. The brutal reality of Viking raids is harsh, yes, but within it lies a story of endurance, adaptation, and unexpected beauty. You sigh softly, the rivers murmur a lullaby for your restless mind. The sun sets slowly, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple as night tiptoes in. You find yourself drawn to the edge of the forest, where shadows stretch long and the world feels both alive and quietly watchful. The forest is ancient and dense, a place of secrets whispered by the rustling leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. It's a realm as mysterious as the seas you've sailed, and you know that many Vikings believed it to be home to spirits and creatures both helpful and harmful. You pause, eyes adjusting to the dim light, and recall an odd Viking superstition. Some warriors carried small twigs or charms made from trees like the ash or rowan, thought to protect them from evil spirits in battle and beyond. The natural world wasn't just a backdrop. It was a living force intertwined with belief and survival. Historians still debate how deeply these animistic beliefs shaped Viking culture versus their more famous pantheon of gods. As you move deeper into the trees, the crunch of your footsteps is muffled by moss and fallen leaves. You breathe in the earthy scent, mixed with hints of pine resin and damp bark. The forest feels alive, almost breathing along with you. It's easy to imagine the tale spun by skalds of creatures lurking in these shadows. Trolls, elves, and shapeshifters. Stories designed to thrill and warn. Your thoughts wander to the raids again. The brutal, raw moments of clashing steel and desperate survival. And to the quieter times like this, when a world seems vast and full of possibilities beyond violence. You wonder how many Viking warriors found solace in these woods, a place to lose themselves and reconnect with something larger than the endless cycle of raiding and fighting. There's a quirky old tale you remember, about a Viking who supposedly survived a raid only by hiding in a hollow tree overnight, covered in mud and leaves, evading enemies who passed mere feet away. It sounds almost too unbelievable. Yet such stories speak to the resourcefulness and stubbornness that marks so many lives. As night falls, the forest's chorus grows louder. The hoot of owls, the chirp of crickets, and the whisper of wind through branches. You stand still, letting the sounds wash over you, feeling a deep connection to the wildness both outside and within. The brutal reality of Viking raids is inseparable from the land itself. Harsh, unpredictable, and filled with both danger and wonder. You find yourself back at the hearth, the fire's glow flickering softly against the rough timber walls of the longhouse. The warmth seeps into your bones, a soothing balm after days spent in the chill of dawn and the brutal sun. Around you, the hum of conversation blends with the clatter of cups and the occasional burst of laughter. The sound of life continuing despite the shadows cast by recent raids. The Great Hall is more than just a building. It's the heart of your community, a place where stories, laws, and traditions are passed down through generations. Sitting here, you realize how much these raids shape not only your body, but your identity. Each scar, each tale shared over mead, weaves into the fabric of who you are. You glance over at the skald, who's just finished reciting a saga of a legendary raid. A mix of fact and myth that leaves the crowd both awed and reflective. The Vikings were masters of storytelling, using these epics to inspire courage and preserve history. Historians still debate how much of these sagas are accurate records versus artistic embellishments designed to entertain and legitimize power. A quirky detail surfaces in your mind. Some Viking longhouses had special rooms called seer chambers, spaces dedicated to magic and prophecy. The shaman or seer might chant and cast spells here, influencing everything from battle outcomes to weather. Whether these practices were widespread or limited to elite figures remains a subject of scholarly debate. As the evening deepens, you feel the weight of the day's reflections settle like a soft cloak. The brutal reality of Viking raids is entwined with belief, community, and a relentless search for meaning in a chaotic world. It's a world where violence and beauty coexist, where the harshness of survival sharpens the edges of hope and human connection. You sip your mead slowly, letting the warmth spread, the crackling fire a comforting soundtrack. Outside, the wind whispers through the trees, carrying the faint echoes of the sea and distant lands. For now, you are home, wrapped in a fragile peace that follows the storm. The dawn breaks quietly, soft light spilling over the horizon and casting gentle shadows on the familiar shapes of your village. The air is cool and fresh, carrying the scent of pine and earth, a stark contrast to the acrid smoke and chaos of days past. You step outside, the crunch of frost underfoot reminding you that winter is drawing near, another challenge in a world that never pauses. You move toward the shipyard where longships rest, their sleek hulls nestled like great sea serpents awaiting the next command. Watching the craftsmen repair and prepare the vessels, you feel the unspoken tension of readiness. Each ship is a lifeline, a promise of future raids, trade, or exploration. There's a fascinating quirk about Viking shipbuilding. These vessels were marvels of engineering, designed to be both fast and sturdy, capable of navigating open seas and shallow rivers alike. Some historians argue that this versatility was key to Viking success, allowing them to strike unpredictably and vanish before enemies could react. Your thoughts drift to the complex relationship between raiding and trading. While violence often grabs the headlines, Vikings were also merchants and explorers, linking distant cultures and spreading goods, ideas, and technology. It's a dual legacy that historians still wrestle with. Were Vikings primarily warriors or traders? Nearby, you overhear a conversation about upcoming expeditions, whispers of distant lands, rumors of wealth, and new gods to encounter. You feel the pull of the horizon, the restless urge that drives you back to sea despite the dangers. It's a call that has shaped your life and many like yours, a blend of fear, ambition, and a desire to carve a name into the annals of history. As you prepare for the days ahead, you understand that the brutal reality of Viking raids is never far away. But alongside it is a story of adaptability, courage, and an unquenchable thirst for adventure that defines your people. You breathe deeply, the crisp air filling your lungs, ready to face whatever comes next. The next raid is not just a matter of muscle and steel. It is also a game of cunning and strategy. As you gather with your fellow warriors beneath the towering pines, the air crackles with anticipation and the scent of pine needles and smoke from the morning fire. The planning begins, voices low and sharp, eyes scanning maps drawn on worn animal skins, marking rivers, villages, and possible ambush points. Every decision could mean life or death. You are reminded that Viking raids were often meticulously planned affairs, not just chaotic bursts of violence. Leaders weighed factors like tides, enemy defenses, and the element of surprise. Some raids lasted only hours, others stretched into weeks or months. Historians still argue how centralized this planning was, whether a single chieftain dictated the moves or if smaller groups acted semi-independently. There's an amusing yet telling detail you remember. Some raiders carried small, carved luck charms believed to guarantee victory or safe passage. One popular talisman was the Thor's hammer pendant, a symbol of protection and strength. Whether these charms truly swayed fate or just boosted morale is a matter of ongoing debate. As you prepare your gear, you feel the familiar mix of excitement and dread. You know the risks, the cold, the enemy, the unpredictable sea, but also the potential rewards, treasure, status, and stories that will be told for generations. The night before the raid is restless, filled with whispered prayers to Odin, Thor, or Freya, each seeking favor in the uncertain hours ahead. You hear tales of warriors who supposedly had prophetic dreams, guiding their choices and saving them from disaster. Whether these dreams were divine or the product of nerves, they shaped the mindset of those about to face the storm. You settle into a fitful sleep, the sounds of the forest mingling with the distant crash of waves. Tomorrow, the cycle continues. The brutal reality of Viking raids beckons once more, relentless and unyielding. The dawn breaks with a chill that bites at your skin. Mist rising from the fjord like ghostly fingers clutching at the longships ready to sail. You feel the familiar weight of your weapons, the rough texture of your shield, and the taut tension in the muscles that have endured countless battles. The air is thick with quiet resolve, a moment suspended between what was and what will be. The longships slip silently through the water, their sleek forms cutting through the morning haze. You sit among your comrades, faces set with a mixture of determination, hope, and the unspoken fear that accompanies every voyage. The sea is both friend and foe, unpredictable and wild, a mirror to the raids themselves, beautiful, brutal, and merciless. You think back to the long journey here, the raids, the battles, the fires and the feasts, and the countless lives forever changed by this relentless cycle. The brutal reality of Viking raids is not just the violence, but the endurance, the adaptability, and the fierce loyalty to kin and culture that propelled these warriors across seas and through history. A final quirky thought surfaces. Some Vikings believed their spirits would feast in Valhalla, the great hall of the slain, where warriors would fight by day and celebrate by night for eternity. Whether this belief comforted them or fueled their courage remains part of the ongoing scholarly debate. As the sun climbs higher, the ships cut through the waves, and you steel yourself for what lies ahead. The horizon beckons with all its dangers and promises. You know the stories will continue. Tales of valor, tragedy, and the unyielding human spirit caught in the tide of history. For now, you hold on to the moment, the rhythm of the sea, and the knowledge that whatever comes, you are part of a story far greater than yourself.